Welcome back to The Way We Farm. So on today's edition of Tom's Toys, we're going to talk about our 7520. So a little bit of backstory. Years ago, I was at an auction in Indiana. I was looking at a 7520. My neighbor said, hey, if you see that 7520, look it over and tell me about it. So I'm looking over a 7520. A guy with Michigan license plates on his pickup, he pulls up. This is the day before the sale. He's looking at the same 7520. So I start talking to him. He says, yeah, I bought a 7520 last fall. No kidding. Yep. So he says, yeah, I bought that in a field cultivator, yada, yada. So he said, I'll see you at the sale tomorrow. Figured I'd never talk to this guy again in my life. Next day at the sale, we palled around a little bit. And he said, hey, we got to stay friends. We exchanged contact information. Well, let's fast forward like 6 years. Guess who's 7520 from Michigan I got? So it's a small world. So at our tractor show, our family, we do a tractor show every year, Labor Day weekend, the Sunday Labor Day weekend. A guy was here, a YouTube guy. I think it was my friend Chris Duffy at Duffy Ag. A guy from Minnesota sent me an email on Christmas Eve about our 7520. He said, I used to own that tractor. Like, yeah, right. Well, anyways, long story short, we exchanged phone numbers. Sure enough, this tractor came from Minnesota. So he told me the whole story about this tractor. He said he had a blade on it at one time. There's the blade frame marks. He sent me some pictures with the blade on it. They push feed. They had a small dairy farm. This tractor has 18-438 rubber. He told me a story about that. When he had it, they'd done some work to the motor, rebuilt the motor. So he sold it to a guy in Michigan. Guy in Michigan showed up with a trailer, hauled it home. My buddy wasn't the one that bought it from him, but my friend bought it at a John Deere dealer. I believe it was a John Deere dealer in Michigan. So my friend Scott that owned this tractor is also the one that told me about the 6030 we talked about in last week's episode. So I bought a 1066 Hydro International on an online auction. I accidentally overbid. I meant to bid 8,100. I accidentally bid 81,000. So guess who came home with the 1066 Hydro? This guy. The way that auction worked is when the last person dropped out, I was the next $100 bid or $250 bid. So I paid too much for an International 1066, brought it home, had it for a year, didn't have a lot of use for it. My buddy in Michigan said, hey, I'll trade you the 7520 for the 1066. A year ago in April, I loaded up the 1066, got trip permits and everything for my Black Pete, took my brother's lowboy, and I headed out. Actually, no, I took my old lowboy. I headed out to, take that back, took my brother's lowboy. Headed out on a Sunday morning, dropped off the 1066, loaded this up, and by 1 o'clock the next morning, I was home with it. So, same thing as our 6030. Don't have a ton of use for it, but man, what a cool piece of history. It's a 1973. It's got the green stack. The tin work is in nice shape. The tires are in nice shape. The AC works. It's got a PTO. Now, a 7520 did not have a live PTO. The PTO only works when the transmission is engaged, the clutch is out. So we ended up, I did not do this. Somebody has modified the steps for an old guy like me to get in and out. But this old tractor, she could use an interior kit and some stuff, but got a decent seat in it. And the guy from Minnesota, when he called me up, Jason said, hey, that tractor had a homemade differential lock put in it. I'm like, what? I hadn't even paid attention. That right there is a homemade differential lock. Somebody done some work on one of the axles. I don't know what axle it's out of, but I don't think it was an option on a 7520. I could be wrong, but this tractor has the 2-speed transmission, they call it. So it's an 8-speed. Now the 6030 just had a synchro, just like a 4020 or 3020 or 4320. This tractor's got a funky 2-lever shifter, park, your low range, high range, reverse, first and third, second and fifth, fourth and seventh, sixth and eighth. And this one has the 2-speed gearbox. So the PTO and the transmission are, you can't do this on the fly. If you're sitting still, you can shift her up and put her into high range or low range. And if you look at the dirty tack, it's got, there's if the PTO's on high, that's the RPMs you run for 1,000 RPMs. Or if it's on low, you run it at that RPM. So this tractor, somebody added a third remote. They did a pretty fair job. Came with a quick hitch, 2 remotes, 3-point hitch. Just a cool piece of American history. Yeah, not quite as cool as the Steiger 400, but these were great tractors in their day. I wanted to sell it. I tried to sell it in December, put it on Instagram. Guy came over, looked at it, drove around, said, I'll buy it. I'll call you back tomorrow. I never heard from him. So in the meantime, we said, we got a pair of brothers. We've got a 60-30 and a 75-20. They have the same motor. They're both 1973s. They are just cool pair of tractors. So my friend Jason from Big Tractor Power said, don't sell that 75-20. You're going to regret it. Keep it. So we got some cool videos we're going to try to do this summer with the 75-20 and the 60-30. So Troy will be running one. I'll be running the other. And we're just going to keep them. And they're not worth a heck of a lot on trade to sell to anybody. But in our heart, they mean a lot. They're kind of cool. My friend Scott from Michigan, he hooked me up with both of them. So I think, if I'm not mistaken, if I looked at our imaginary contract, he's got first rights of refusal to buy the 60-30 if I sell it, or the 75-20. So they're here to good home. We're going to get a barn built to keep them in soon. So stay tuned. We're going to show you more. So like, subscribe. Always thanks for watching. If you've got an old 75-20 or an old articulated tractor of any brand, let me know. I just find them very cool. Back in the day, you imagine bringing this thing home in 1973. This had to be the biggest, coolest tractor in the neighborhood. So I think they only made about 4,000, a little over 4,000 75-20s, and they made a little over 4,000 60-30s. So they're somewhat rare. We're very fortunate to have a pair of them. So I'm very glad that my wife is generous enough to let me buy 2 cool old tractors to keep them in my collection. So talk to you next time on The Way We Farm. Great week to feed the world.